بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. We're on point number 19, where the author rahimahullah ta'ala said رأس مالك أيها الطالب من شيخك, which is section 3 of the book, wherein the author rahimahullah speaks about some etiquettes of the student with his teacher or with his Shaykh. So in section 1 the author brought about 15 points with regards to the etiquettes of the student with himself, and in section 2 the author mentioned a couple of points about how to study, and then we started section 3 wherein the author speaks about etiquettes of the student with his Shaykh, because in section 2 he told us that part of the methodology of studying in Islam requires or indicates that a student must have a teacher. So now it only makes sense that the author rahimahullah will then speak about etiquettes with the teacher. So the author rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned in point number 19, your capital, O student, O seeker of knowledge, is from your teacher. He says here, follow his pious manners and noble character. As for acquisition and dictation of knowledge, then that is extra profit. However, do not be taken by an exuberant love of your Shaykh, lest you fall into abomination without realizing it, and all those around you realize. So do not imitate him in his voice, tone, walk, movements, or appearance. For he did not become a great Shaykh just by this. So do not fall by following him in this. And as usual, normally when we study the actual book itself, we summarize the book and we say, okay, this point can be summarized into the following sections. And when we done that, we see that generally the author rahimahullah, and this is also part of, you can say, the methodology in Islam, is that there is a call to what to do, and then there is a call to what to avoid. And sometimes it's the opposite, like the Prophet ﷺ would tell the companions, do not do this, but instead do this. Or do not say, Ma sha'Allahu wa shi'ta, but say, Ma sha'Allahu thumma shi'ta, and other things that we studied in Kitab al-Tawheed on Sundays. So here the author is telling us, okay, have these noble characteristics with your teacher and copy him, because a teacher is supposed to be a good example, a role model. So a teacher is not meant to be someone, a classical teacher is not someone who just comes, does a lesson and goes and leaves. Rather, he's someone that is more like a mentor. So you will take him as an example in how to implement that knowledge. So if the teacher is like that, then you should follow his pious manners and noble characteristics and so forth. But then the author gives us a warning. But don't think that following the Shaykh in his good manners means that you have to speak in the same tone of voice, or you have to copy in his clothing or how he walks. No, that's not what makes him a Shaykh. What makes him a Shaykh is the fact that his knowledge and that he acts upon the knowledge. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned here with regards to the author's statement, follow his pious manners and noble character. The Shaykh Uthaymeen says, هذا من أهم ما يكون إذا كان شيخك على جانب كبير من الأخلاق الفاضلة والشمائل الطيبة. This is one of the most important things, especially if your teacher is somebody who has very good manners, i.e. he has a good portion of manners, of noble manners and good characteristics. فَجَعَلْهُ قُدْوَةً, then take him as an example. But now Shaykh Uthaymeen is going to tell you something to be careful not to fall into something. He says, لكن قد يكون الشيخ على خلاف ذلك. But it may be that one of your sheikhs, you study with a sheikh, and he is not that. He doesn't got that. He doesn't have those good manners. Or he has some good manners, but not a lot. He may be other than having good manners. So what the Shaykh Uthaymeen says, أو عند نقص في ذلك. Or he may have a deficiency in the good manners. فلا تقتدي به في هذا. Then do not follow him in that. ولا تقل إذا صار شيخك عنده خلق سيء فاقتديت به هكذا كان شيخي يفعل ذلك. And do not be, if your teacher has some bad manners, do not copy him and then you say, this is how my sheikh used to be. I.e., we have to know that there's going to be some things that a sheikh does that maybe are not good manners, that Allah may show you that. It doesn't mean you can use an excuse, oh, my sheikh used to be tough with me so I can be abusive. No, it doesn't mean take as an excuse. And this is a very important point. Just because the sheikh does something doesn't mean that that's going to be an evidence for you or for a student to follow that. Rather, the sheikh is only an example to be followed if he himself is following the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As Shaykh Uthaymeen says, لأن الشيخ يكون قدوة في الأخلاق الفاضلة والشمائل الطيبة لا في مساوئ الأخلاق. Because the sheikh is going to be an example in the noble characteristics or noble manners and in good characteristics, not in bad manners. So again, it's important that we take note of that. Whenever you see something, especially if you have a teacher who is not a sheikh, he's not a scholar yet, he is more likely to have more defects in his manner. Don't copy that. Don't copy that and say, oh, well, he's like that. No, try to be better than him in that. And make dua that, inshallah, he will get better at that as well. As for the author's statement that first learn these manners from your sheikh and then the extra, i.e. the knowledge, that's only extra, it's extra profit. Shaykh Uthaymeen says, الواقع أن التلقي والتلقين هما الأصل. In reality, getting the knowledge, that is the foundation. That's what you're going to the sheikh for. لأن التلميذ لم يأتي للشيخ ليتعلم منه الأخلاق فقط. Because the student did not go to the sheikh in order to learn manners only. بل ليتعلم العلم أولا ثم الأخلاق ثانيا. But rather to learn knowledge first and then manners secondly. فالتلقي والتلقين مقصودان لذاتهما والاقتداء به في أخلاقه مقصود لذاته أيضا. ولهذا لو سألت طالب العلم لما حضرت عند هذا الشيخ لأجاب إليه بقوله لأتلقى علمه ولا يقول ليقتدي به في الأخلاق. وعلى كل حال فالشيخ شيخ في العلم والأخلاق. So Shaykh Uthaymeen is saying that normally people go to teachers to study knowledge, and that is true. They don't normally go just to learn manners, just to see the manners of the sheikh. And if you ask a student, why did you come to this sheikh? Then he will say to study knowledge. He wouldn't necessarily say to get manners. And then at the end he finishes off by saying, but in every situation, either situation, the sheikh is somebody that you take knowledge from and manners as well. With the condition in brackets, as long as obviously you take those manners that are good manners from the sheikh. If he has any defects, because he's a human, you still have respect for him, but you do not copy him in those defects. Although, here as a side note, when big shuyukh come, especially those who are elder in knowledge and elder in age, maturity, wisdom, then it is good to go, and even if you're not sure what the sheikh is talking about, maybe it's above your level, but go and try to see the manners of the scholars, because definitely that will help to have an example. And normally sitting with righteous people helps the person to become more encouraged in learning. Then Shaykh Uthaymeen moves to the statement of the author rahimahullah. So do not imitate him in his voice, tone, walk, movements or appearances. Shaykh Uthaymeen mentions here, فَهَذَا صحيح, this is correct. i.e., O student, do not copy the Shaykh in his voice, his tone, his walk, movements and appearance. Shaykh Uthaymeen says this is correct. لأن بعض الناس يملكه الحب لشيخه أو لغيره من الناس فيقلد صوته ونغمته. Because some people get so in love with their Shaykh, or to other than the Shaykh, that he ends up copying the Shaykh's way of speaking or his tone. And he goes on to say, with regards to his walking, his movements, his appearance, وهذا أيضا ليس على إطلاقه بل يقال. And this also is not just left general, i.e., when the author says do not copy him, Shaykh Uthaymeen says this is not left general. Notice how the Shaykh Uthaymeen is disagreeing, but he's doing it in a respectful way. He says this is not left general. Rather, what we say is إذا كانت مشية كمشية النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فاقتدي بها، لكن ليس لأن الشيخ قدوتك بل لأن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قدوتك. So we say, if the Shaykh is walking or he's talking in a certain way, or he has an appearance in a certain way which is in accordance, i.e., it is following the way of the Prophet ﷺ, then copy it. Not because the Shaykh is doing it, but because the Prophet, not because the Shaykh is your role model in that sense, but because the Prophet ﷺ is your role model ultimately. And Shaykh Uthaymeen then goes on to mention some longer points which will summarize that sometimes the movements of the teacher, i.e., how the teacher moves in a lesson, how he talks, how he his harakat, his movements in the lesson, sometimes can have a positive effect on the students, i.e., wakes the students up. It's not that the Shaykh is just sitting in one way the whole lesson, and the students kind of their mind wanders. And this is one of the difficulties of studying behind a computer screen, that no matter what you do, the Shaykh can't see you. And so it becomes easy for a person to become distracted. And he gives an experience. We'll read this short experience by Shaykh Uthaymeen. وعندما كنت طالبا في المعهد العلمي في الرياض كان معلم النحو يتحرك في كل شيء يحتاج إلى حركة فكنا منتبهين معه نتابعه تماما وهو بهذا يوقظنا حتى لو كان بنا نوم فإن النوم يذهب عنا وقد يجيء معلم آخر يتكلم يسرد الحديث سردا فمثل هذا يميت نشاط الإنسان ويكسله. So he's saying, when we used to be in kind of a college, Islamic college or knowledge college in Riyadh, we used to have a teacher who used to teach us grammar, and he used to move. The teacher used to move in every situation when he was explaining something that needed movement. So we were paying attention to him. So we would follow him totally. When he was explaining something, our concentration was totally there. Because this type of thing, this teacher moving and kind of having some sort of life, used to wake us up. Even if we had some sleep, if we were tired or had some sleep with us, the sleep would go away because of the teacher, the way he was teaching. He was lively. And he said, and sometimes there may come another teacher who just speaks fluently. He just brings the speech non-stop. And sometimes, like, monotone, you could say, although that's not the word that the Shaykh Uthaymeen mentioned, that would sometimes make the students lose interest or become a bit lazy and relaxed. So it depends. If you see, the teacher has to take every statement or every situation in accordance to the audience that's in front of him. So there are some classes, for example, which are for students of knowledge, and there are serious classes that the student has to be awake himself, and the teacher will come and explain. And there are some other classes where you may need to use a whiteboard, you may need to be more interactive in order to keep the student's attention up. So the teacher will take whatever action is appropriate, and inshallah, us as students, or you guys as students who want to be teachers, inshallah, will also follow suit in that, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Then Shaykh Uthaymeen goes on to mention the last statement. So he did not become great, i.e. the teacher, the author says, for he did not become a great Shaykh just by this, so do not fall by following him in this. So do not fall by following him in this, i.e. do not fall from the right path. Shaykh Uthaymeen says, he says, أما إذا اتبعته في أمر محمود فليس هذا بسقوط. If you're following the Shaykh in something that is praiseworthy, then this will not be falling down, i.e. will not be falling away from the right way of the student. So that's the end of point number 19, inshallah. We take a couple of minutes and we'll start point 20 bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. If you have any questions on that point, you can ask them now. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.